My name is Inez Maubane Jones, and I'm a part of Arts and Humanities Bainbridge. I think a lot of you may know it as the Bainbridge Council. It was rebranded 2 years ago and is now Arts and Humanities Bainbridge. And the three focuses are public art, arts and education, and Currents Online, which is a resource for you to find out what's happening in arts and culture. And I think that's probably why Reed may have asked me to do this, because that is in our wheelhouse, it's in my wheelhouse, and it was a lot of fun for me because some of the artists I knew, and I chose people that I had some connection with. I'd either seen their work or seen an interview. They impacted me in some way. And so these are the people that stood out to me. So let's run it, Reed.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for doing that. And Currents Online is available. Just you search for Currents Online and you'll find it. And if you know of organizations that do arts activities here, you can connect them with Currents Online and with Inez and get their programs listed so that we can all find out about it. Currentsonline.org. Yep. Inez just put it in the
very simple
in the chat there. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. So I think this should be showing up now.
That's perfect. Thank you. All right. So that's just the title. I called it Black art deliberately. I could have called it African American art, but I called it Black art simply because it is Black History Month. And a lot of these artists are self-identifying as Black artists. So I went along with that word because it can go either way, but I chose it deliberately. All right, so Carrie James Marshall is the first person that we see here. Basically, and another thing I meant to say, this is a conversation. So we're just gonna, I'm gonna be talking your thoughts about what is being shared. So this is called Untitled Studio. And he's basically part of an HBO special that I think you might all be interested in seeing, which is called Black Art in the Absence of Light. So it's a documentary film by Sam Pollard. And so this particular work, he describes it as an allegorical catalog of the many modes of art making. So it's fine, the occupation of the artist, but the different ways in which an artist perfects their craft or enhances it or is influenced by it. So let's just take a moment to look at what he's kind of depicted as a representation of that. As artists, I don't know if we have any artists here. Any artists? No? Oh, we do.
Anne is holding up some needles and showing that she's a fabric artist.
She's a fabric artist. Yeah, beautiful. That's great work. So you understand, if we went into your studio, we'll see different things. But what Marshall has here, what stands out to you? What stands out to me was, well, first, what I found interesting is obviously the hair, and the sort of, if you can see, I don't know, do you have a pointer, Reed? It doesn't matter, but that sort of that hair with artists, with not just artists, but with people of color. Hair is a big thing. I'm sure you're all aware of this, and with women. Forget the color of the person. It's just something that we all sort of identify with. And I found that interesting. It's the first thing I noticed, because maybe it's the red backdrop, but as a woman, I thought, oh, how interesting. And obviously the lights, and if you think about our Zoom culture right now and the world we're living in, I just found it a very timely piece. I'm not sure about the skull and everything else.
Right in the center.
Right? That says a lot. What does that say to you, Reed?
Well, it seems to me like I'm not supposed to miss that.
Yeah.
And so I don't, it's also kind of interesting the way that the heads, people's faces are turning.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't have an immediate answer. I don't know that it's a puzzle to be solved, but it definitely makes me think there's some sort of ancestry or history or ghoulishness or I don't know what.
I think you've hit something there, that ancestry.
I got
Go ahead, Anne.
I got one
To me,
to
there's a piece about the philosophers' paintings of the sort of the Renaissance, where there was always a skull and a drape of velvet, and it meant somebody was deeply thinking about the past. There was this whole, and there's kind of a vibe of that to me.
Yeah.
Right? Going back, the history, ancestors.
Yeah.
I'm definitely was drawn to the figure in the back.
Oh. Why?
Well, I think that's probably a nude model.
Yes, probably. Yeah.
So that's that. It's so obvious, you know.
That is interesting, because the woman whose hair is being messed with, she's obviously the one in the work that's under construction on the left. But you're right, behind that there's a layer waiting to be part of this entire scene. That's very interesting. Well, I just think that's the beauty of art. We don't know. He gives us a sense of what he is thinking about, but it's up to us to interpret what it may mean. But I do think the ancestry that everyone's kind of picked up on, that's a really powerful point about what he's depicting. All right, I think we're ready for the next one. Okay, this is not a specific artist, but I just wanted to highlight this. So this documentary that I mentioned, the HBO documentary that highlights this exhibit, which was 2 centuries of Black American art. And it was held at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art in 1976. And as you can see on the right, what I kind of letting you know about it is, it was the first major exhibit of its kind. It's the first exhibition of its kind. And it basically, as it surveyed the African-American art in its entirety, as much as they could at that point, depicting art from 1750 to 1950. Can you imagine?
Wow.
the breadth and the depth that would be available, and the whole thing was to show the contributions of American art from African American artists that had been neglected pretty much at that point. And it says it had over 200 works, 63 artists, and it had all the mediums you could think of. So I brought it to your attention because I think the documentary will have a lot more visuals of what was presented there, but I just thought it was interesting. I mean, I was struck just by the sculpture that you see, and if we're talking about what we were just talking about, ancestry before, there's a story right there in that sculpture. That's the centerpiece. So I think that there'll be a lot of imagery about the influences of the African American story, the Black history story. So something to look into.
So this HBO documentary is currently available or coming out soon?
It is. It actually is running right now. So let me. It's in the resources at the end. So
yeah, that's great. That's great, and I'll obviously share it in the email when I send this out. And I'm obviously going to look for it.
Yeah, it should be fascinating. I haven't watched it yet, so I'm looking forward to that too. Okay, all right. So Mark Bradford. I love Mark Bradford. Okay, so I encountered Mark Bradford. He did a 60 minutes interview with Anderson Cooper, which is also part of our resources. That's worth watching. Fascinating man. Very, very tall African-American man, lives in Los Angeles, his story is really interesting. His mother was a hairdresser. So he grew up in a hair salon. And then what he would do, I don't know if you guys remember this or how it was done, but how African-American hair was done to create a perm was you got these little strips of paper, like little squares that they would kind of put in there. The product will be in there to put the square, the little curling, a curler, and then get it going. And that's how the perm was created. So he would be in this hair salon and these would be discarded everywhere. He thought, hey, I can create art with this. So he does collages. And like it says in his bio that, he'd use the paper rectangles, bobby pins, hair dyes. And over time, he became a printmaker and one who did collages. So how he works, he basically layers his work. So he'll have one layer of whatever medium he's using, then another layer, then another layer, then another layer, and then he starts to strip it all. And it creates whatever art he's talking about. He also, okay, I'm going to explain what he's saying. So Bradford describes his work this way. Think about all the noise out there in the streets, all the beepers and blaring culture, cell phones, amps, chromed out wheels and synthesizer. I pick up a lot of that energy in my work from the posters, which act as memory of things pasted and things past. You can peel away the layers of paper and it's like reading the streets through signs.
Yep.
Isn't that just such a perfect way to describe it? And this is his latest work that he created during the coronavirus pandemic. It's 2020 work. So as you can see from the colors, he's telling a story about, and how he likes to lay it out. It's almost like he creates a map and then puts points, points of activity, points of, like he says, the buzz of life. So thoughts, what do you guys think about this one?
To me, it looks like a reverse American flag in flames.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow.
That's what I got immediately. Like,
really?
I thought of it, it seems to me like all the maps we've been looking at, all the graphs and maps that we've been looking at too.
I see a lot of different houses and on both sides with a road coming down the middle, but those little square things to me were all like houses. It's a urban area where people live.
Yeah, I see grids of streets.
Yeah.
And then flow, I see water. Man.
Oh, there's
you see the flames. I see the, I wonder the intensity of the darker reds as like inflamed areas. Yeah.
And there's a river coming through on the right-hand side there. I think.
Or a freeway.
Yep.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Yeah, I love, wow. This is the beauty about art, right? He's just giving us a sense and whatever he's feeling and thinking about. Yes.
I'm not quite sure that I understand the difference between for me now, looking at this suburban area where there's lots of houses and stuff in an area somewhat to the left of the center, and then you go over on the other side and there's still those houses, but they're spread out and it's more blue on the blue area. Maybe that's suburbia. Perhaps
he is from LA, so I'm not sure the specific map, but that's really, really fascinating. Can we go to the next one? I've got 3 of his different works that kind of. So he does these grand scale. So that's another thing about his work. It's grand. It's really big. Assembly exhibition, big exhibit type work. And so
these works are huge on the wall or whatever.
Huge, absolutely huge. And as you can see, like you can see the layers, the story that he's telling, that is just, you know, full of so much thought, so much activity, and so much a concentration, to me anyway, of points of that activity. He calls it deep blue. I didn't go much into it because I just wanted to appreciate it without having the artist tell me what he thinks it should be. I was drawn to it. And I don't know, it will take up our time, but that's the 60-minute clip that with the interview with the artist. But what are your thoughts? And I love the color, the orange with the, the turquoise. That just, I absolutely love that.
They look like balloons coming up. Like there's a festive thing going on, something very festive.
Yeah. And you're right. And the texture of them are like, you know, paint that's kind of shaped like it, because he's a Pollock, right? So he'll splatter. As you can tell, it's all out there. We can go to the next one, Reed. So that is, I think this one gives you, and that's the artist. That's Mark. And so he had a show in London called Cerberus, I believe it is.
Cerberus.
Cerberus. Thank you.
The dog at the door of Hades.
Oh,
The two-headed dog who guards.
Two-headed dog. That's his name.
Yeah.
Okay, then Anne, since you know that so well, what do you think about this work?
I just, I want to stand next to it, and it's just mesmerizing.
Yes.
A huge, amazing quality, but the textures are so astonishing. And it's like a combination of found art and that whole layered thing. I think you could probably read this for months.
Yes.
Right.
I love him standing next to it because of the scale. Now we really can see the scale. It's huge.
Huge. Huge.
And also,
How tall is he, Inez? How tall is he, Inez?
He's 6'4".
Okay, so
Somewhere there. Don't quote me, but he's a high 6. He's a b-ball player tall. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's very, very tall. I should find out what we're thinking about it. Oh,
I love it.
I was gonna say, look, it makes it look like you're actually uncovering layers of the wall or a fresco or something. I mean, that's a great picture to add. Thanks, Inez.
No, you're welcome. I when I saw it, I was like, this will highlight exactly how he does his work. And so it's worth watching that, you know, if you have time, that 60 minutes, because he really shows you his process. He's just such a fascinating individual. And the funniest part is, you know, he grew up in just a regular neighborhood in LA, and I think even on the South Side. So he has these hairdresser ladies who are like, I don't understand what his work means, but sure it's pretty, you know. And it's such a wonderful way that he's brought his community into his art. Yeah. And that sense of appreciation and that bridge. I mean, he's in London and he's in Amsterdam, and they've known him since he was a kid. And to see the influence of his art on the world is pretty, it lifts not just him, but his entire community up, which is really special.
So when are we going to get him over here at the Sam?
We'll work on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was Mr. Bradford. So let's go to our next artist. Okay.
Oh, wow, yes.
So this was special to me because I actually got the Vanity Fair issue with Breonna Taylor on the cover.
Yep.
And I want to read to you what the artist Amy Sherald said about this. So she says, she sees you seeing her. The hand on the hip is not passive. Her gaze is not passive. She looks strong. I wanted this image to stand as a piece of inspiration to keep fighting for justice for her. When I look at the dress, it kind of reminds me of Lady Justice. As for the hues, I tried a rainbow of options, yellows and reds and pinks, but none quite felt right until she spoke to the portrait itself. Brianna, what color do you want this dress to be? Please tell me what color you want this dress to be, she mused. Then she hit on blue, a shade that echoes Taylor's March birthstone, the aquamarine. The color that I chose almost had a resplendence to it. The monochromatic color allows you to really focus on her face. The whole painting really becomes about her. I just was so taken with this because this was obviously, she never posed for this portrait. This was her, and the certain details about it is she's got a wedding, an engagement ring because her fiance had proposed and she was about to get married. So she kind of, got all her life story and try to put it all in there so we could appreciate that. And as she said, she did it for this, but she really did it for Brianna's family.
Yeah.
It's something that they just really appreciated. So what do you guys think?
Poignant. Oh,
Yeah.
just hits right here.
It's making me cry.
Oh.
Well, she seemed like just looking at her face in all those pictures, she seemed like the kind of person you really miss. Like the world needs people like that. And it just seems like a tragic loss is such a trite phrase, but in her case, it really felt like that. Still does.
Yeah.
Like she was a person of light.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
There's really a sense of strength and toughness even in the eyes. She's not giving anything away at all. No way.
No. But she has resolve.
She persisted. She's persisting there.
Correct.
And she still is persisting.
Amen.
She will always be known as a person that
It's funny when I look at that, it's like the Madonna blue. So maybe she's turning into a saint.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens. We imbue people with divinity or caring love or whatever it is, and they can become saints for us.
Well, maybe she
empire. Some of the dress makes her look like you were saying, sort of classical, or raised up as almost a statue or an honorary sort of outfit. And the look in Amy's eyes is not that much different.
Yeah.
No, right? So there's a little bit of her in what she put forward. So let's see another one of her portraits. This is Mrs. Michelle Obama. So I wanted, the next slide has the actual portrait and I'll discuss it a little bit more, but I just love the scene and just watching how Michelle felt about seeing this, her vision of her, in this form. So, and of course that's Amy on the right. Let's go to the next slide.
Inez, this is the one in the National, I saw it in person.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You can tell us a little bit more about it.
Karen?
Amazing. Yeah.
Along with Barack Obama.
And with all the foliage. Yeah, it was just amazing.
That's the next slide. And why? Okay, so this is something I'm going to read. So when Amy Sherrill's portrait of Obama was unveiled at the National Portrait Gallery in 2018, many viewers were pleased, while others were shocked by the artist's distinctive approach, which uses grays for skin color as a way to look beyond the superficial differences of race. I thought that was such a powerful statement for the first African-American first lady we've had for her portrait to depict America, really, and the vision for what we are capable of and about. And that, as I'm sure, I have no idea how much consultation she had. I'm going to make your skin gray. Are you fine with that? it was more like, this is how I feel, and I feel it represents who you are. And I want the world to see it this way. So you've seen it live. Does her skin tone have any effect? Is it a factor?
When you put it up next to President Obama, you know, it was completely different. Yes, you could see the difference, and you could feel the difference.
Oh,
Absolutely.
in what way, Karen?
The different art form.
True.
And, you know, I didn't even think about a statement other than that, but it was, you know, it was Amy's art form that did that, because she used stark black and white, and then the skin is gray. And with beautiful background. That's what I received from it. I mean, I must have stood in front of that portrait for at least 15 minutes. Luckily, it was a very quiet day, and there was not a lot of people there. And but it was very powerful. Of course, I love her. You know, her book Becoming is probably my favorite book.
Yeah, indeed.
And that's an amazing book.
Powerful.
It is indeed.
You know, she really is.
So Amy Sherrill.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, no.
Finish your
That's
thought.
all I have to say. I just really like the woman.
You know, I felt as far as the book goes, I thought that Mrs. Obama was sitting next to me, giving me the story, telling me what was going on. Right. I mean, she was reading it to me.
Yeah.
That is great writing. that's awesome.
She is a great writer.
Oh, yeah.
She is.
Yeah.
Very
So
much.
Even her
Cheryl,
husband admits she's better.
Yeah. Well, he comes next, so we'll compare them. But so she, the Amy Sherrill, is a graduate. She has an MFA, and obviously a graduate of the Maryland Institute College of Art. And she also went to Spelman as well. But she's the first woman to win the Outwin Butchervar. Did I say that right? Portrait Competition Grand Prize. Oh. And that also came with an exhibition, which was the Outwin in 2016. And she's wildly known. Really explore her work. She's just fascinating. And every one of her portraits tells a different story, because as you can tell from Michelle Obama's expression, something's going on there. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the next slide.
Yep.
Please. Okay, so in contrast to that, we have a completely different artist who painted President Obama's portrait. And as it's described, Obama is seated, the chair is resting, and obviously on some soil that we can't see, but the bottoms of his shoes are shiny black shoes, and they simply float. So he's not planted on anything. He's just kind of floating. And so the artist here is Kahinda Wiley, and he is an LA native and New York-based visual artist. And he said, basically, he comes from a long line of portraitists. So those are his influences. And he engages the signs and visual rhetoric of the heroic, powerful, majestic, and sublime in his representation of urban Black and brown men found throughout the world. So that's his niche that he's found. to tell those stories, which is probably why the president approached him. So anyway, this is a completely different.
I happen to have been able to go twice to see the exhibit over at the SAM of Kahinda Wiley's book, portraits. Amazing! Every one of them was amazing. Lots of the flowers, and all the flowers thing is pretty much his normal thing. But oh my goodness, I still have them on my phone, you know, because you can take pictures, and so I still have every once in a while I look back and say, oh my gosh, I would love them to have them again. Maybe they will have it again.
One of the things that's reversed though is that generally, although he's using famous portraits and putting modern faces in them, they're usually not famous people, right? They're mostly people from the street,
yes,
or people that he's run across. In this case, he was asked to actually paint a portrait of somebody famous and had to figure out what to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Reed, for pointing that out. Yeah, that was a different task. And how do you think he did?
Oh,
Obama looks unusually stern from the normal pictures I see of him. He's often got a very kind, sort of welcoming visage to his face, but in this one, he's looking like he's taking names.
Yeah, I think he'd been through it.
Sorry.
You know, it was towards the end of his presidency. You know, it was during a time where, you know, he was unjustly criticized, and it took those 8 years took a huge toll on him. And that's what I see in his face is the weight of the presidency and the first Black president. I see that weight.
Yes. What do you think about the flowers and the fact that you all pointed out to the fact that his face is stern and, you know, just serious, and the weight of it, but he's surrounded by
beauty and life and flowers. And I think it's like, you know, it feels like what I want to do is I want to embrace him and let him know I'm one of those flowers and those plants, and let him know that, you know, we're with him.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Well, you know, yes. I agree with that, you know, and the thing about it, all of his that I remember now, all of the ones that I remember from the SAM all had flowers too. And in one way or another, they were surrounded, the people were surrounded by or uplifted by flowers of different kinds.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because I've always felt like Obama is essentially a very urban character. I don't really see him as nature boy, and you know, we don't see him out camping with the kids, or and so I'm really intrigued by this. But it does kind of remind me of a lot of classical European paintings of the tapestry background, or the you know, floral walls that are in some of the old, and the chair looks to me like an old European style chair, and he's sitting on it. And maybe that's part of it. It's like, I'm claiming this too. I don't know.
You know, you're right, because that is he comes from a line of well-established portraitists, right? So his influences must include that.
Right.
And, you know, and he brings that, as you said, Reed, in a contemporary setting that we can all relate to. But the training and the eye is probably very, very classic. Anyway, let's go to the next one. Thank you. Thanks, Reed. Okay, so I didn't do research on this one because I wanted the images. I was curious that I wanted us to all experience it together and talk about what it says to us. So Cara Elizabeth Walker, I can tell you about the artist. So she basically, it's almost like the not cartoon, but that way you take, it's a white wall, and she takes figurines or images and pastes them to create a story. And so, as it says there, she used the skill, the artistry that is produced in traditional Indian, Chinese, and Javanese shadow theater. So that's what she's really depicting. It's a story of dark images that don't really present any kind of movement, but they tell episodes and stories of men, women, and children whose bodies are intertwined, usually, against some sort of backdrop. What's the backdrop here? What's going on?
There's people in chains.
It looks like it might be a slave auction kind of thing, although W.C. Fields is, I'm going to mute Anne here. I think W.C. Fields is presiding, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And because there's a pot of money, right?
Yeah, it's a big stack of money.
There's a
Money
stack
and alcohol.
Oh,
Yeah, I see a
you're right.
glass of wine.
You're right. And is that music? Is that a
Phonograph.
what do you call those things? You know them.
Record
Phonograph.
player.
Yes.
Record player, you mean?
Yeah.
With wine.
On the bottom under his foot.
But a lot of those chains are broken.
Yeah.
What's on under his foot? I don't know.
Is that someone hanging,
Oh,
You're right.
yes.
There's someone hanging there.
Yeah.
or is he climbing up? I can't tell.
I think he's climbing up. It's almost like, and look, he's got his hand out, like he's climbing up and maybe trying to get someone, some sort of support, some sort of chain of support going.
Or he's breaking free, because I see the man to the right who is hanging.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed that they're at the end of the fishing poolers, it looks like there's money hanging there.
Mhm.
Right.
And a big pile of money on the. I know. I was thinking of that. This sort of a dark parody of the Fishers of Men for spirit
dark.
over mammon, right?
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that, because although they're in chains, they all want that money.
Right.
That's the real carrot. And the ones who are kind of setting themselves free a little bit seem to be situated elsewhere. The focus is not trying to catch the man with the wine who's kind of just one at a time, everybody, $1 at a time. They're out of that whole scene. I found this very fascinating, and what it's saying. And when I think of that song that came out, Childish Gambino, "This Is America," and what he was presenting, I thought of that in her art form. So very interesting stuff to be thinking about. Okay. Our next one, please read. Okay, so.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh,
Right?
that was a great show too over in the Sam.
Oh, well, hey,
Oh,
let's
yeah.
have the premium African American artists that are nationally recognized right now, and this is essentially that. Some are just but most of them are nationally recognized. So he's an assemblage artist, as we can see. And so his work is interesting because it's performance, installation, and so all his stories are has crafted formations of Black identity and community. Again, let's I didn't want to be prescriptive about what the artist was saying. I just thought the art should speak to us. What are your thoughts?
I love the one with the statue in the middle with the birds on top, all around the flowers and everything.
Yeah.
I just love that.
Yeah. There are interesting details in that. And I think he obviously is a man of color. He doesn't shy away from using, all the different beautiful shades of color that we have available to us, but using them in a way to tell a layered story.
He uses found art. If I remember quite correctly, when seeing the one over at the Sam, that was all found art.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which is really pretty amazing, because these are all, that's a normal sized person size there in the middle.
Huge. That is really, really huge. Yeah, he his work is diverse, actually. That's what I really enjoy Nick Cave's work. It's all unique and tells a different story to you personally as you see it and experience it. But
it's so playful and not always joyful necessarily, but very I don't know, it speaks to me more through emotion than logic.
Yes. Right?
And yes,
And
what
that's a
medium does
experience.
he use? Oops.
I'm sorry. What was your question?
What mediums does he use? This almost looks like a fabric or fur or.
Yeah, I think you're right. That looks more like fur and you know, he uses, but as an assemblage artist, as you said, Sheila, it's found art. So whatever they find a way to create art out of it. So I would say he uses all of them. He uses all of them. Textile, the different sort of layering to tell a story. I mean, that's a huge piece in itself. It's like, what I thought was, it's like, it's on the man's head. So he's obviously thinking about something. Mm-hmm. In my thought. So what's going on in that head?
Is it a man? I kind of thought it was a woman.
To me, it seems like a man, but a person.
Yeah, it's a man.
All right.
Okay, then. Here's some gender.
I would love to see that artist's studio. It must be full of amazing stuff. Because you can't make art. You don't just suddenly sit down and say, I think I'll do this. Where's the recycle bin? You have to like collect all kinds of stuff and have it sorted by material and type and color and size and everything else. It must be an incredible place.
It must be an incredible place.
And that's what he talks about too. He talks about when he started out, when he first started out, it seems to me, it was a matter of picking up a piece of paper that was shiny in the gutter on the street, you know, seeing different things and then picking them up and collecting them actually, and then composing something around what he had collected.
Oh, so there's an element of history there.
I think so. So he said, as you said, but it's specifically, it's not just found art, it's found historical objects. With contemporary dialogues. So he's very intentional in what he's looking for to tell that story. And so it says here, the figure remains central as Cave casts his own body. So I guess it's him.
I guess it's a guy.
You know, and some of his work, I didn't put it out there, but it's movement. It's not just static. You know, it's a person moving or people moving, and I guess it's all about him and his journey. So
when they had the one at the Sam, they had people from the Cornish School of Art dressed as like this, as well as his other pieces, dressed up in his lovely, beautiful costumes, dancing around town.
Wow!
Yeah,
he calls them sound suits for some reason.
That's right, sound suits. Yeah, right.
Oh gosh, I love what he's wearing, even in that picture. I would totally wear that. Right?
Yeah.
While Kay's works are rooted in our current societal moment, you know, global warming, all that, he asks how we may reposition ourselves to recognize the issue, come together on a global scale, instigate change, and ultimately heal. Which is why I see birds on that man's head.
Mhm.
So that's really profound. So he's telling the story with that ultimate goal.
Beautiful.
Read. We'll go to our next, it might be our last slide, I'm not sure. It is our last slide. So, Betty, so she's been doing this work for a long time. And I chose this one last because the others that we've seen are kind of contemporary Black artists, African American artists. She comes from having lived through a lot. So she comes from the 60s and 70s. And so her trajectory, you know, it's obviously poetic, but it's much more provocative.
Mhm.
You know, she's really advocating change, economic, social, political, cultural. And the particular art on the right, which was jarring to me, especially, let's look at where we are today. And Jemima is no longer welcome. You know, and Jemima has had to kind of change a little bit and rethink that story a little bit. But she depicted this while Aunt Jemima was not even thought about as a symbol of anything other than something yummy to put on your pancakes. And this is a disturbing image in my view. I mean, there's some very strong messages she's saying. So let me read what she said. It was, and this is entitled The Liberation of Aunt Jemima. It was 1972, 4 years after the death of Martin Luther King Jr. This is what she said. When I heard of the assassination, I was so angry and had to do something. But it wasn't until she received the prompt from Rainbow Sign that she used her art to voice outrage at the repression of the Black community in America. I found the mammy figurine with an apron notepad and put a rifle in her hand, she said. The liberation of Aunt Jemima was born, an ensemblage that repositions a derogatory figurine, a product of America's deep-seated history of racism, as an armed warrior. It's become both SAR's most iconic piece and a symbol of Black liberation and radical feminist art. I ask you this question. With what we have been through with, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement and, going through, I should say, in 2020, do you think this symbol symbolizes where we are today? This what she's depicting about this figure. Do you think it symbolizes where we are today, or is it something we can say, well, that was appropriate for what it served, but it no longer serves where we are in 2020, 2021? That's my question.
I'm really struck by the image of the Black woman holding a white child.
Yeah.
And seeing, like, so many places you go, I always think of Philadelphia where everybody's white except the wait staff in the hotels or right. It's like, that's still today absolutely happening all over the place. And it's always struck me as so bizarre that people who denigrate people of color, Black people, Indigenous people, and yet want them to take care of their kids, trust them with their babies. That's just so bizarre in so many ways, right?
Yeah.
But that's what it's like, yeah, that piece is still echoing all through the world, not just our country.
And I sure feel like the Second Amendment is like a flashpoint and continues to be. I mean, there's no discussion that doesn't involve guns is probably like the ultimate let me help you decide device in our world. So that's kind of, I mean, I wish it was in our rearview mirror, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
Does it, what emotion does it inspire to move Black Lives Matter forward? Is really what I'm getting at. Does it make, because the whole thing that was different about Black Lives Matter this time was everyone understood in a way that made sense, you know? It just made sense. Is something like this a put off, is what I'm trying to say, is what I'm trying to ask.
Oh, I think it was a put off then. I mean, I think the idea of the Panthers arming themselves and
Yeah.
black men saying, I am a man, was very disquieting in the same way as the disquiet that we heard the immediate white lash to Black Lives Matter. I mean,
Right.
it seems like it's just the second chapter in the same damn book.
Is it different?
You know what bothers me?
Go ahead, Sheila.
One thing that really bothers me mostly is the smiling Aunt Jemima from the pancake syrup thing, you know, in the background, background there, and the grossness. I can't think of a different word, but the grossness of the Aunt Jemima figure, the picture, the face.
Yeah.
The face is so gross and so far removed from the smiling, happy Aunt Jemima.
Yeah.
And I don't mean they're just, it's more than gross, it's almost unreal, almost an unhuman look. In that, as well as in the picture down below of the woman holding the baby. And the baby's crying, by the way, which is interesting.
Yeah, the baby's crying, and right in front of her is a Black power symbol. You know?
Oh, that's right. That's the,
and this is her
I just
apron.
noticed that.
So that's the symbol that's actually front and center, which is very, very interesting. It's very provocative in many, many ways. Hi, Peggy. We're almost done, but I'm glad you're here.
What happens?
Yes.
What happens to the one with the trickster over here? I want to.
Yeah, let's talk about that one. So, what do you think about that piece of work? So, where I have the information about it, what are your thoughts about it?
Well, it looks like somebody's locked up. It's a woman.
Really? That's what you see in it?
Well, I see the two breasts.
Interesting.
But then I see down here, there's a bell, but the first thing I thought of it looked like a lock. It looked like she was being locked up, and she's got the necklace that's really chain.
Yeah. So she says this: I'm the kind of person who recycles material, but I also recycle emotions and feelings. So the whole point of this piece that we see is that she mixes surreal, symbolic imagery with a folk art aesthetic. Does that come across to you guys? Yeah? That makes sense, right? I found that interesting that you felt it was a woman and the sort of chains that are kind of depicted in the two central places. Does it feel liberation? Like, do you feel it's liberating, or does it feel constricting?
No, it doesn't look liberating to me at all. I can see the trickster though with the headgear up at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered if that was Lady Liberty's crown.
Nemesis.
And having those breasts cut off or inverted.
Yes.
Like,
yes, right, Anne.
Stripping away the nourishment of the female body, right?
That's really, really fascinating. Yeah, she's definitely aesthetics. That's her what she's going after. But certainly her life history, her life journey speaks to the work that she does, and it's very, very it speaks for itself. Reed, can we go to the last page with the resources? I know it's not interesting, but I think it's, so some of the places you can explore other artists and get more information about what we discussed today. You know,
I will include these in the links to the video. Sure.
Okay, but I
don't have to write them down.
No, you don't write them down. But I do like the galleries that you can view online. I thought that was a really great resource so that you can explore this work for yourself. This is obviously just a tiny little bit, but I focused on the most influential living African American artists for what was shown today, but there are obviously so many others, and what we can all learn and get and be inspired by is beautiful. And I'm going back to what you said about the Obama portrait that married the European with a contemporary story. I mean, that's the beauty of art. We pick from what, you know, it's a collective journey for what is ultimately produced. And even though, you know, it seems silly to label things as Black art, Hispanic art, this art, that, you know, come on, it's art, right? But I think what's powerful and what's special is the story that's being told through art, through a medium that otherwise may not be able to be translated in the same way. How she was feeling, she expressed. How he thinks, he expresses in that way. So I appreciate the fact that we're looking at Black artists, but I also caution us not to just blindly go, oh, that is Black art.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
Step back and go, it's art. Wow. You know? So that's important. Sheila,
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to pull these together. This is absolutely wonderful, Inez. I know that you've opened the door to a lot more exploration. Both the video that was earlier and then these links. And well, this is worth going back to. I will watch this for sure.
Okay.
Hey, and you'll hear all your